Well, because I think I'm so clever, I decided to call this one She Talks Art to represent the flipped version of We Talk Art, because we're flipping the interview on our usual host, Bonnie Griffith, and this time she gets to be interviewed. And she's definitely worth the interview. I think actually a number of folks that are with us this morning probably know more about Bonnie than I do, because members of the board have gotten to spend more time with her over the years than I have, since I'm a newer member of the board. But Bonnie's been around for a while. She's been around the block a few times. And I think that other members of the board who've known her longer know that she's had a lot of experience, and she's got a long history in the world of art. She's made a name for herself, and she's she's earned her street cred, that's for sure. So Bonnie, tell us a little bit about your start in art. I know that you had artist parents, so tell us about your childhood and growing up as an artist, beginning at the age of what, 5?
5. Yes, yeah. Well, so yeah, I've been around since the world was in black and white. So anyway, yeah, I grew up in Montana, central Montana to be exact, and my parents had a nice sized cattle ranch, and it was if anybody knows anything about the geography of Montana, the north central part is very wide open spaces, and we lived remotely. It was very remote when I was a little kid, and but my mom was an illustrator, and my dad was a musician, and they were really encouraging to me to pursue art, and however it was, when it came time to go to college and look for a career path, art was like, well, do your art, but get something that pays the bills. So, but yeah, so I declared at age 5, I was going to be an artist. So I guess you have to set your goals, set them high, and I can say that through other careers and there's always been art has been a part of my career.
Awesome.
Your bio says you grew up near the Missouri Breaks. What does that mean?
So that's the Missouri River there's a lot of rough country, and they call it the Missouri Breaks. So it's a big area where there's cattle, Bureau of Land Management land that is grazed by ranchers in that area. So I spent a good amount of time analyzing the landscape from the back of a horse, and let me tell you that I didn't always appreciate it at the time, but it's given me some good insight to more recent art and appreciation of the land. So I always say I paint the landscape from the heart, and that's pretty true.
Okay. And was Kevin Costner actually your neighbor?
No. but if Kevin needed, if he needed a chief of staff or something as the governor of Montana, I would have certainly been available. But no, I guess that's all a moot point. But look at the last episode of Yellowstone.
So who were your influences in terms of art as you were growing up?
Well, I think I was really influenced, of course, by Western art at the time when I was a child, because that's what I was surrounded by. And so, of course, there was the Russell and Remington, but there were also, Wyeth and, of course, others in that era that were influential to me. And my mom being an illustrator, it was like you had to paint things that were accurate. You couldn't, there wasn't a lot of room for interpretation of especially animals. And so that's taken some time to break away from that being super realistic with work, but I think I've managed to accomplish that.
What kind of illustration did she do?
Mostly landscape and animal.
Okay.
She did a couple of books and did some illustrations for them and for other publications too.
Okay. But you weren't able to major in art. What was your major?
So I majored in radiology sciences. So that was my background. I moved from Montana, rural Montana, to Chicago to go to school, and went through that program and pursued that career for 25 years, and ended up working for a couple of medical companies in research and development and product support. And so that was very fun. My last part of that was working for a company by the name of Siemens Medical Systems, and I was part of the women's health products. So mammography was a big specialty, and so that was really a rewarding time, and I really loved doing that. And when I traveled, because I traveled internationally, so I was always I always had my sketchbooks with me, and this was into the 90s, well, into 2000. I left the company in 2001, and I always had my sketchbooks, and cell phones were, I mean, we had cell phones, but nobody was taking photos. I mean, we didn't use cell phones like we do today. So I always had a camera. So I've got like tons and tons of reference material. And it was always like, oh man, these photos they just don't represent what we see. So at some point, I'm thinking in the early 2000s, I started going out and doing plein air work. And it was like, holy cow, this is like amazing what you see. And learning to paint from real life and in the landscape was a huge change. And I think that really, of course, that launched me into doing a lot of plein air events, and I think it makes you a better studio painter too, because you see, and then you can use those photos that are maybe not the best quality and don't show what you're missing from being out there in the land.
Mm-hmm. What was your early plein air setup like?
It was pretty basic. I'm pretty basic, I mean, I want to always have, the least amount of time to do setup and take down, because I think it's so important to get out there and just paint. So, I mean, literally, initially it was, I just use oils, and, it was just really painting out the back of the vehicle. And you know what? It's still the same. It's still the same. I'm still painting out the back of my vehicle.
It hasn't changed that much, huh?
No.
Although, do you usually use oils now when you're going out to paint plein air, or is it more pastels?
No, I think I probably do more pastel, because there's no setup time. You open your tray and you've got your colors there. You don't have to mix anything, and you start painting. And so that's always that's a great thing about pastels. There's the immediacy to it.
Mm-hmm. And what about, how did your work kind of, tell us about the transition to more how your style transitioned in terms of the representational work?
Well, I think it's it's an evolution. You start looking at impressionistic work, and it's like you want to paint like that. I mean, I did. And so excuse me, you just, you gravitate toward that, and you study and you learn, and you realize that you don't have to paint every leaf on the tree and blade of grass, and with just shapes and values, you can usually get your point across with what you're wanting to show people. And so that's my focus, with my work. And I think it was a gradual process, um, and experimenting with different products, and papers and pastels, and even oils and so on. But it's a and it's I think it's a never ending learning process.
Mhm. You're secretary for PSWC. You have served as president of the Northwest Pastel Society. You're a member of Landscape Artists International, Plein Air Painters of Idaho, American Impressionist Society, and you served for 7 years as chair for the Meridian Arts Commission, and as executive director of Waterworks Art Museum, and you've been a curator for several galleries. You've taken on a lot of leadership roles. How has that work, do you think, impacted your work as an artist, your development as an artist?
Well, I think particularly with doing a lot of curating, and my time that I spent at the museum, um, you learn about a lot of other artists and techniques and things like that. The museum that I was at was also an art center, so a big part of our focus was outreach to rural schools. So our art center was a lot of teaching, and that, I think by teaching, I mean, obviously you have to have something to teach, but you also, it's a great way to build your own work, and perfect it, if you will. um it's I think it's easy to get bogged down in ruts of how you're working. But when you've got to be teaching and bringing new ideas forth, that's good for your mind and for your art. And you know I mentor artists locally, and then through a company called Mastrius. And I think that that's also a really great thing, because I learn from the folks I'm mentoring, and it makes me work to make sure that I'm giving them content to work on, and enhance their skills.
Mhm. And tell us about the residency that you had.
Yeah, so I've done a couple of, well, I guess I've done 3 residencies. One was through, it was just really, I was a resident artist for a company. And then I did a residency in the Grand Staircase National Monument, and that's down in southern Utah. And so I hadn't done a whole lot of painting in the Southwest at that point. And so that was a month long. And my goal when I went there was to do at least a painting a day, and I worked primarily in pastels. And it was a great way to really work on your craft, because you're immersed out and everything was plein air. And I did do some oils, but it was predominantly all pastel, at least the larger pieces. And and then I did some education, because that was part of the program. I taught classes through the visitor center for the Bureau of Land Management and Fish and Game that's in Escalante, Utah. And the and then also with the school system. And there's a great little story about the schools. When I did that, I decided that, you had to come up with your own take on what you were going to do with these students. So I thought this would be really kind of fun, is to take big long sheets of craft paper and get these kids to do like cave drawings of their own cave drawings, so their current lifestyles as to what was important to them on these sheets of paper. And it turned out to be a really big deal. And they put, I mean, because this was a lot of art, so they put these sheets of paper, they lined the hallways on both sides, so it was like you were going into the cave with all the cave drawings on them. And so that was a pretty fun project. But this one little kid, he comes in and he says, I said, "Oh, how are you?" And he said, "Oh, man, I've had a rough day." He said, I was walking to school, and the wild turkey started chasing me, and he was just going on about all these things that happened to him, and that's exactly what he painted on the walls on his part of the paper. It was great. He had a great story. I think he was in the true spirit of cave drawings.
Yeah. That's
But the
fun.
residencies, and then I did a residency up in St. Anthony, Idaho, at a place called the Idaho Art Lab, and it's a nonprofit art organization that's an art center that has just a wealth of different programs and projects for people. And so I was there for, I think, 6 weeks, and I chose the time to go up there like the middle of February through the latter part of March. And somebody said to me, I mean, I live in Boise, and the climate in Boise is quite mild in the wintertime. And so when I was going up there, and I had made mention to somebody that I was going to be doing some time in St. Anthony, and this artist friend of mine said, "Well, you better get used to Montana weather." And I said, "Yeah, I'm sure." I said, I'll dress warmly." Well, for at least 2.5 weeks of that time, it was a -20 Fahrenheit. And so I spent a lot of time doing studio work, but I would go out in my car and I would do photographs, and then I would take gouache and then sit in my car and do little sketches, little plein air sketches. I called it uh, vehicular plein air, because I'm sitting in my car. It was way too cold to be outside. There was no chance that any of the gouache would even stay liquid at that point. Nothing would stay liquid at that point. But that was a fun thing. And I always encourage people, if you want to immerse into a body of work and be creative for yourself, I think the residencies are really a good thing, because you're pretty much isolated, if you will, and you have the luxury of just working on art. And so I think it's a good thing. And I'm always, the park services have a lot of different residency programs, and other nonprofits, and some for profit.
Hmm. Hmm. You just reminded me of one of the articles that I had read that had been written about you, and kind of comparing plein air painters to postal service workers, kind of like, sun and sleet and rain and snow, nothing will stop them, kind of thing. Although sounds like, there are limits. There are actually.
Yeah, you just have to work around those limits, right? I mean, if you got pastels
from the car.
You're not going to be. I guess maybe that could be an interesting thing. Some wet pastels.
So, I mean, you teach a lot of workshops. You've taught a lot of workshops. You continue to teach a lot of workshops. What kind of insights have you gained in terms of what, students that come to your workshops, and the kinds of things they think they need, the kinds of things that you see they need in terms of their learning?
Well, I think, part of my work in the medical field was also doing a lot of teaching to physicians and staff and technical in a technical realm. And I think that so teaching has always been something that was important to me. And I like to share what I know. And I think, like I said before, I think you gain from working with students. And I'm of the mindset that I like to share what I know. I don't hold back secrets, because my goal is to make my students be the best artists that they can be. And if they get to be better than me, that's fantastic. I mean, that's like, well, I mentored or I taught that person, and I think that's a very rewarding thing to have students that, to work with students that benefit from what you have to offer. I guess, I don't know if that answered your question, Pam.
I was just thinking in terms of, for example, plein air techniques. When you are teaching a class on plein air techniques, for example, what kinds of things do you find that students most need to learn about plein air techniques, for example, that they come in and it's missing from what they know? Is there anything?
Well, I think it's
Or,
well, I think it's learning to look and to look at the landscape and then focus on a small section of it. I mean, because when you look out, I mean, you see 180 degrees, right? Basically, it's not all in focus. It's what's in front of you is in focus, but you see all this. So you've got to decide what is important, and what your best shapes are. And so, part of my program is that I teach people to do line drawings and work out a composition, and and do value studies, because those value studies are so important. It's like you're like putting the puzzle together, and it makes it so much easier than if you're trying to just look at everything and see everything. And then of course with plein air, the light's forever changing, so you got to do your value studies and then work from those. Otherwise you're chasing the light and then you end up with a mess. So it's all things that you'll learn. But when I go out, I always do the value studies and the line drawings, and it's just part of my program. And even when I work in the studio, I do the same thing. So I think it's good practice. But I think those are steps that people often forget, and think that, well, I just want to go out and paint. And there's a few things that you should do before.
They want to skip over those steps. Just get to the
Yeah.
painting. Let's get to the color.
Yeah, let's put some pretty color down.
Yeah. You've done a lot of judging too, during especially plein air shows. Do you have, what kinds of insights and lessons have you learned from being on that side of the exhibition?
Well, to me, that's the hardest thing to do, because and I try to stick to a pretty regimented process when I'm judging, because I like to take as much subjectivity out of the equation that I can. And when you and it doesn't matter, because I judge a significant amount of just regular art shows, and often they're mixed, a variety of media, and so you have to look at the elements of everything that's important, your composition, your values, use of color. You know, if you're taking some risk, not just copying something. And you know, those are all things that help you in the process. And then of course, you know, then from, because I've entered shows and I don't get into every show that I enter, you know, there's, when you're rejecting an entry, it's like you know what that person is feeling. I mean, sometimes that's really hard for people um to not to be rejected from a show, and I get that. And so there's always that little bit of angst, you know, that you're, oh well, this person's not going to get in, and you know, you feel badly about it, but you know, you can't um there's only so many spots, and so on. So it's that's the hardest thing that I do.
Mm-hmm. What's the number one telltale for you that someone has maybe simply copied what was in the photo?
It's just that I don't know, I'm not going to explain this, I don't think, very well, but you know, it's a there's a look to the fact that it's been copied. You know, there might be, you know, in photos, not everything is accurate, or it doesn't look right just because of the way some things are photographed. And so when those get transposed into the art,
Mm-hmm.
it's a pretty telltale sign that it's been, you know, I always think my mom one time was saying about in her senior year, she used to go to a watercolor class, and the gal that taught the class used a lot of photos that, and it was all, everything was watercolor, and everybody painted the same thing, and everybody painted, you know, it was a paint along basically. And I remember her talking about this photograph that the instructor had given her that was a horse, and it had a really goofy looking leg the way it was photographed. I mean, it just didn't look right. And
Mm-hmm.
and that was, my mom was, you know, that really bothered her, because I mean, she knew horses, and it was yeah, she said, you know, this isn't right, and you know, but this is the way we're told that we have to paint this. And I said, well, it's because of the photograph. You know, it's every you know, animals get in goofy, we all do, we all get in goofy positions that you don't want to have somebody, you know, making your portrait of, or your painting of.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think those are kind of the telltale signs with, you know when something's copied, and they're often very tightly done, and like copying a photo.
Yeah, I remember, I'm not going to get this exactly right, but I remember Richard McKinley one time saying something about, when asking someone about a composition and something that didn't work in the composition, and the student saying something like, well, but it was there, you know, it was
Right.
in the scene. And he said, well, then that's what you should name it. It was there.
It was, yeah. Yeah, and I think that's something that, you know, going out and doing plein air work, I mean, it's okay to leave out things that are going to be distracting from what your focal point is, you know. And that's, and of course, the one thing that you have to start, I think, with anything, it's starting out your composition with deciding what's your focal point, where's the party, you know. And it's probably not the, I don't know, you know, something goofy in the background, in the, you know, in the mid ground, or the background, or something that is detracting from what's important in the painting.
Yeah.
So
Well, I think,
yeah, it's okay to leave things out.
yeah. No, I think it's definitely a beginner's mistake too, is to have that fear of using any kind of creative license to
Right,
alter either what you're seeing, or what the camera has captured. Yeah,
right, because you think that it's correct
right.
to to put everything in. I mean, you're out there painting, well, so you should be painting everything that's in the scene, but
Right.
nah. I mean, sometimes you have to adjust the bend in the road.
Yeah. Yeah. I read that your work is in the homes of collectors throughout the US, Canada, Australia, Sweden, Germany, and England. Not too bad. Also, that you
Yeah.
participated in,
It,
plein air Moscow.
oh, I did. However, Pam, it's not Moscow, which is in Russia. It's Moscow, which is in Idaho. So, and when I was living in Washington, and then of course when I went to Idaho, moved to Idaho, it was, I think I erroneously said, "Oh, it's Moscow. Are we going to be going through Moscow?" And my husband said, "No, we're going to be going through Moscow." I said, "Oh."
It's spelled
So
just like
apparently there's
Moscow.
I know.
You mean you didn't swing by Putin's place?
No, I didn't paint the Kremlin or anything like that. I was just painting the Palouse of Idaho.
It's just, well, that takes a lot of the pizzazz out of the story, Bonnie.
I know.
Okay, so, and you paint all over the darn place. Have easel will travel, right? You're still painting all over the place. Tell me about your painting partner. Has Minnie retired?
No, Minnie is not retired. Minnie she's a rescue dog. She's part Dachshund and Corgi and Chihuahua and who knows what. But Minnie is a good travel companion, and she has the Dachshund personality that I'm most important, and I don't really care what's about you, but this is all about me. So she's great. She's really a great dog.
Yeah, she is. I love Minnie. She's a great
Yes,
little, she's a great little paint along dog.
yes, as well as is your Henry.
And yeah, Henry sends her love to Minnie for sure. Well, Bunny, I'm hoping that you're going to be coming to California in 2025 to teach a workshop, because feeling kind of jealous. I think our PSWC members in California are jealous that only people over in your area are getting to get workshops by Bonnie Griffith. So I'm hoping we can coerce you to come this way. That would be great. Yeah, we could use it. I could personally use it. I know that. I could use a little more coaching with plein air. That's for sure. My one lesson though turned out pretty good.
Yeah, I gotta talk about that a little bit. I was really I was honored that you chose to drive all the way up through north central Utah on your way home from IAPS to join me for a few days before the Midway plein air, and we went out and painted a couple different locations. And as I recall, one of those paintings that you did, or maybe it was a second painting that you did from one of my favorite places along the Provo River, got into the 99 Voices show, and you won an award.
Well, that's not the one.
Oh, that wasn't the one? Oh, but
Actually kind of even better. The painting that I did with you in Midway, which turned out very nice. I brought it back, and then I did another painting based on that, and that one got into IAPS.
oh, that's right.
The
Okay.
IAPS show, yes, which is like amazing. I can't even believe it. Yeah, because I
Yeah.
was rubbing elbows with Bonnie, who just, I mean, and it was like my second time ever painting plein air. Yeah. Thank
I
you.
know. Well, that was a good afternoon.
It was.
It
It
was a
was a
good day
lovely,
painting.
a lovely afternoon with Henry and Minnie and Les and Scott in a just beautiful, beautiful area. Yeah, I want to do that
I
again.
went to lunch.
Yeah,
We went to
yeah, we'll have to do that again. It'll be wonderful.
yes, and as I remember that was the same day that we went to lunch after, and we were at this kind of nice restaurant. We welcome, and Minnie slipped out of her collar and went racing through the restaurant, in and around, underneath tables, around, just at like her zooming speed. That was
Yeah,
the highlight of another highlight of the day.
yeah, Minnie broke loose and
Busted free.
yeah, yeah. Good times. Well, does anyone
Well,
have any
I
questions for Bonnie?
was just going to say too, Pam, that I've done some pastel classes up in the northwest part of Montana, in Kalispell, and Francesca has graciously attended one of them, and then she coerced some people to coming to the next one, who've actually, some of those folks have come to subsequent classes. And the kindness that some people have, Francesca brought all the pastels that these people would need to work from. And I think that's very generous. Francesca, thank you so much for doing that. That
Oh,
was
you're
that was above and beyond.
Well, I have ulterior motives there because I'm trying to get more people into pastel up here because I'm like one of 3 artists, that do pastels in this area. So I'm trying to get other people interested, and they're enjoying it. So yeah.
I mean, it's a matter of
It,
exposure. They just don't know what they're missing, right? And then once they find out,
Yeah, they really do. And, a lot of them are oil painters. So it's a nice transition to go from oil paints to pastels. It's a similar, method of approach. So yeah, it works well.
and the setup is so much easier. It's so much quicker, I
Yeah,
think.
I think so too.
Mhm.
Yeah, Bonnie, I was going to ask you, did you start with pastels or did you start with oils, and how long have you been doing pastels?
Well, my mom did mostly oil painting. So of course I was into her paints as, literally really young, and probably absorbed my share of lead
Oh,
before anybody knew it was like
yeah.
poisonous. But that was really what I liked to do. And my first show was all oil paintings, but I always loved to do drawing. I love to do pencil drawings and charcoal drawings. So I did a lot of figurative work in pencil and charcoal, which I haven't done for a long time. But I just found this, and I've known about it for a while. But this New Orleans drawing group, um, where they have a live model every Thursday night, and that's been very fun. And so you're doing drawings from live models, and you can do whatever medium you want. But first, your initial, I've just, the only thing I've ever done when I've been in this group is just do charcoal.
Mm.
But anyway,
But is that a Zoom
so
class?
I guess
it's over. Mhm.
yes.
Oh, that's cool. That's
It's on, they're on Facebook. They're on Facebook, and it's
And you
the
can
New
just,
Orleans drawing group.
yeah, you just join the Facebook group.
okay.
Mhm.
Oh,
And
cool.
it's like $15, I think, for the session.
Okay. Gotcha.
So
Cool.
it's very fun. Very
Um,
fun, very fun group.
I don't know if you can move around in your studio, but I see what's behind you, but I'm curious to see the rest of your studio if you can. I
Oh,
don't
yeah,
know if you
Oh,
Bonnie, show us your studio.
oh, this is like, well, it's like it's pretty scary right now. But you know, I'll tell you a little story. Is when when I was working at the museum in Montana, um, my husband was just retiring from his business in Washington, and he decided to move to Eastern Montana when our house sold, and he retired in Walla Walla, Washington. And Eastern Montana is not known for balmy weather in the winter, and so he gets there. It is 28 below zero, and there's a couple feet of snow, and he literally gets out of the vehicle and says, I think I'm going to ask you to give your notice because I'm not going to live here. And I said, well, how about you find a place for us to live then? And so we decided on a few different locations that would suit both of us, and that's how we ended up here. So that's a little odd story to share, but anyway, when we were in the market and it had a 4-car garage, the house was only like 1,800 square feet, and the yard was quite small. And I said, this looks really interesting. So then I'm looking through the photos, and in this garage, the owners had apparently remodeled, and they had moved all of the kitchen cabinetry out into the garage that they were getting rid of. And so there was cabinetry, and there was a sink with water. And well, who needs a 4-car garage? I mean, I don't. We have 2 cars, right? And so I said, okay, this is you need to buy this house. So that was the criteria. So anyway, I work in a garage. It's my laboratory or studio. There's a lot of testing that goes on here. And anyway, so I'm going to give you a quick little spin through here, but I didn't clean up anything for y'all. So
okay. We don't care.
Okay. So I have I've been doing some oil paintings that should be already being sent to a gallery, but it's oil, so it's waiting to dry. And then I have a few collections of art stamps and a good collection of brushes and storage space and more storage.
Yeah.
And don't get sick here when I'm spinning this around. But yeah, a lot of good storage. And so I can do small classes in my studio, and I really like that. And my mentoring groups that I'm working on, the ones I'm doing in person, we've evolved from just doing mentoring where they come and bring work in, to we're actually doing some hands-on. So they're actually studying, they're working on a project, and then they have a month to work on some more things based on what we did in the mentoring class, and then come back, and we, right now we're doing water. So and I think Norma's on here, right? I think she's one of my dedicated mentees. And Norma is someone who has really blossomed with pastel. She started doing pastels, I think last fall. I did a 1-day workshop that she did, and she has really just blossomed with her work, so, and she's done watercolor and things like that. But okay, here, I'm really wobbly. But anyway, there's a lot of works in progress and things sitting around. I like to leave things sitting out and about for a while before I put things in frames, because there's always something that when you pop into the studio, you say, oh, I see, I need to fix this. And, so when you don't have to frame something immediately, like you do when you're out in a plein air event, it's great to have that luxury to look at that stuff and, that art and maybe make some adjustments. So, and the other thing I think that's worth mentioning, I did a, I still do, but Scott Christensen developed an online class, a series of recorded videos on his process. And I have to say that I think that was one of my best investments in art instruction. I've really learned a lot from that, and then have continued on with I don't know if he really calls it a mentoring, but it's a monthly gathering, and we look at things and then assignments for the month if you so choose to do them. So it's always great. You gotta, I think you really have to, you have to keep learning, I think, regardless of what stage of art you're in.
Yeah, I would agree. It's always a learning process.
It is. And I think, I learned something from my students, from my mentees. And I think it's a healthy process for an artist.
Nice.
Great.
Thank you, Bonnie. That's great. Any other questions or comments for Bonnie? Well, that's been great. Where's Minnie?
Oh, Minnie's, I think she's lounging.
Oh, she's lounging.
She doesn't come out in the studio very often. It's only when she wants something.
Oh, okay. Henry has to always be right next to me. So.
Well, Minnie really, she really connects most to Les, my husband.
Yeah.
So she's really his dog, but she has, she's recently come to figure out that I'm the person that feeds her. And, so I've come up the chain of preferredness in her world.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Yeah, it's like, whatever it takes.
Well, Bonnie, thank you so much for sharing part of your story. I know you have so much more to share, and we really appreciate you taking the time and letting us flip the interview on you this one time. It's going to be a great week with further activities. So looking forward to the demos that are coming up. We've got demos coming up Tuesday. I mean, what day is today? Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And then Sunday, Eve Miller is going to be the capper. So that's going to be great. And then I'm going to be announcing some quick little contests. We've got 4 little contests coming up that are going to be like, people have to kind of find information on our website or in the magazine or that kind of thing. We have some subscriptions to give away to Plein Air magazine, little contests like that.
Nice.
So, yeah, should be fun.
Yeah, so we're I'm always interested in knowing who you all would like me to interview for We Talk Art. And it's sometimes, I mean, I'm trying to schedule out through, I mean, if I can get everybody scheduled through the end of 25, I'd be really happy. But yeah, so our January one is Carol
And Struts.
and Struts. And then March is going to be Jeff Ludwig. And we're going to hear all about Ludwig pastels and the Ludwig legacy of the production of Pastel. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
Cool.
2025 is really shaping up. Calendar's filling up quickly, and we've got some exciting stuff coming. Workshops, demos, We Talk Art, you name it. So stay tuned, everybody.
Okay. Well, you let me know when you want me to come to California, because I'd love to come down and do a little plein air workshop.
Oh, yeah, believe me, you're going to be here. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, you guys. Have a great week.
Guys online. All right. Bye. Thanks,
Thank you,
Bonnie.
Bonnie.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Bye.